Assalamu alaikum. Here are 15 ways that we can improve Ramadan 2020 based on the lessons that we would have learned over the course of the Iftar Insights series during Ramadan of 2019. Number one, discipline. Muslims are supposed to epitomize discipline and practice discipline in every aspect and facet of our lives. Three areas we found that our discipline can be improved include: one, the way we utilize the car parks at the various masjids; two, the way we utilize, or in some instances not use at all, the shoe stands and racks at the different masjids; and thirdly, and most importantly, and we don't have to wait for Ramadan of 2020 to get this right, we should strive to fix this ASAP, the lines for Salah. There are too many spaces in the lines that we need to tighten up, and we also need to ensure that those lines are straight at all times. This is one of the practices of the Salah that should be maintained inside and outside of Ramadan. Point number two concerns guests. And firstly, kudos and commendations to all of the Jamaats that we visited who treated us as guests with such amazing hospitality. That being said, if we had to improve on that even further, we would suggest, one, that Jamaats don't assume that persons know the systems that exist at that particular masjid. You see, every masjid that we visited had a different personality and very unique systems, even for the break of fast and for the observance of simple things. So please don't assume that travelers or persons who are visiting your masjid for the first time because they were invited to that iftar specifically will know the protocol or the systems at the masjid. An impermanent sign, whether on a whiteboard, blackboard, or a printed sign on a sheet of paper or Bristol board, etc., can do wonders to alleviate awkwardness and sometimes feelings even of intimidation. Our third suggestion concerns seating arrangements. Now, we are not in any way, form or fashion trying to tell any of the Jamaats how they should arrange their seating and their systems for Parda. Every masjid that we visited had a different setup for how they observe Parda. For instance, in Sangre Grande, Parda there, as you would have seen in the video, begins with a rope. So this is not an issue of Parda, but to share some feedback with you that based on the different seating arrangements that would have been depicted over the course of the Iftar Insights series for 2019, we received quite some phenomenal feedback on the Santa Cruz Masjid's style of seating, where they allow not open seating but family seating, so that families can sit and share the iftar and the break of fast together. Many folks have messaged to ask if it would be possible for their masjids, or they would like it if their masjids would consider such a system. At the very least, a special request is made for some sort of special seating arrangement for parents of toddlers. Even if no other family or special seating arrangements are made, some sort of special seating arrangements for the parents of toddlers, because sometimes you really do need all hands on deck when you've got toddlers to contend with, so that one person can look after the child while the other parent is afforded the opportunity to have dinner. So Imams, Jamaats, please do consider, depending on the Aqidah and the practices at your masjid, inshallah. Our fourth point naturally moves towards children. And on the topic of children, one, we have to say that we were very encouraged and moved by so many of the Jamaats that have been making deliberate efforts to try to get parents and families to bring the kids to the masjids. Some of the things we saw that we would like to encourage other Jamaats to adopt include kids corners at different masjids. Now, kids corners don't have to be a formal setup. It could be as informal as just an area tucked away in a corner where the kids have access to coloring books, books to read, different other toys, etc., that can keep them occupied, especially the younger children, that can keep them occupied so that they're not bored and they're not running around while the salah is happening, and they do have something to keep their minds occupied. We also would recommend as well that conversations be had with children about inside voice versus outside voice, so that we can all try to, whilst we're encouraging the kids to come to the masjid, we can try to ensure that the noise levels is not affecting in any adverse way at all either the performance of the salah, and especially some of the older folks at the masjids who, you know, their penchant and their tolerance for noise is a bit reduced or a bit less than what the average person can handle. So at the very least, just out of consideration for our moms and dads or grandparents who make the effort to be at the masjid for Ramadan, let us please try to minimize the noise from the kids for their sake, at least, inshallah. And one special example that we wanted to point out came from Cedros Masjid, where they actually have a kids table. And when I say a kids table, I mean they've got not a table reserved for kids, but they've got an actual lower to the ground kids table specifically for the youngsters, where the kids can sit and have their dinner together with the rest of their friends. And it really was a sight to behold, and it has become an integral part of the culture of the iftar at the Cedros Masjid, and one that we were really awestruck by. So maybe, inshallah, it's something that you and your Jamaat could consider as well. Our fifth way that we can improve Ramadan 2020 concerns the point of tranquility. There are some masjids, and I know you know what I'm talking about, there are some masjids you walk into and immediately upon entering the compound, much less for the praying area itself, there is a sense of ease and of peace and of tranquility that surrounds you. For us this year, 2019, we got that feeling in particular at masjids like the Williamsville Masjid in Santa Cruz, especially so at the Las Lomas Masjid, which we did mention on camera, at the masjid in Madras, at the masjid in Cedros, even at the masjid in Dow Village in California. These were all masjids where the culture is one of serenity, peacefulness, and quiet. So we would like to urge that other masjids, or maybe if your Jamaat is not quite there as that we take specific measures or specific steps to encourage this sort of atmosphere as well at the different masjids. And we can do that by, for instance, the example at Dow Village in California. The praying area, as soon as the brothers and sisters are done praying, they come down into the hall immediately. So there's no liming whatsoever in the praying area. In the hall, there is conversation, but the conversation is still so soft. But when the brothers and sisters are finished having dinner and they really want to have animated conversation, the masjid has catered for that. They've got really beautiful bench and park seating arrangements outside of the masjid. And it was really wonderful to just see how the Jamaat members have been so acclimatized and how the culture lends itself to such that the brothers and sisters at that Jamaat, they just go with the flow naturally. So we go seamlessly from the prayer area where there's a certain level of discipline, calm and serenity, to the whole area where dinner was served, where even there quiet and tranquility permeated despite how many things were happening at the same time. And then all the conversation afterwards took place outside of the masjid in a nice garden area with really lovely garden seating, etc. So it's just something for us to consider. I will end off point 5 with one very important note, and that is to say that even if you don't do all of those things for Ramadan of 2020, please, one of the most important things to do for Ramadan of 2020 is kindly make or create the culture, reinforce the rules, remind the brothers and sisters at the Jamaat to stop talking when the azan is being sounded. Let our discipline for Ramadan and let our peace and tranquility at the masjids for Ramadan begin with this basic Islamic rule, because that is the rule, that we're not supposed to speak, we're not supposed to be engaged in any sort of chit-chat when the azan is being sounded. Our sixth consideration or suggestion as to how we can make Ramadan 2020 even better than our 2019 Ramadan concerns sisters' considerations. We found that at many masjids, the parda that separates the men from the women, they do have some sort of a window or a curtain that can be pulled so that the sisters can always follow the salah, even in the event of an audio or PA failure. We found a very wonderful situation at the Las Lomas Masjid where the sisters there have been afforded a monitor whereby they can continue to see via this monitor what is happening on the men's side, because the camera hovers over the imam's praying area and the first line. So even if there's an audio failure, the sisters can still see. And this is simply because the sisters' area is a bit removed from the men's area in that masjid, and they didn't want to take the chance. Now, you don't have to be that extravagant in your considerations, especially if the sisters' area is nearby or within audible distance of the men's praying area. At the very least, ensure that the brothers in the masjid are trained and taught so that should there be an audio failure, they can in turn continue with the takbirs until that sound reaches to the sisters so that they can continue to follow the salah. But some sort of consideration should be put in place as a contingency in the event that there is an audio failure. And this applies not only for the salah, but also maybe even for the Jummah khutbah, etc. Our seventh point for how we can make our Ramadan better in 2020 concerns community considerations. And big kudos going out to the Enterprise Masjid, the Kumana Masjid, the Jama Masjids in San Fernando and in Port of Spain, because these are masjids that really do take their communities into consideration. They have assessed the communities that surround the masjid immediately, and they cater for those communities as well when they prepare for the iftar and the dinner, so that when they eat, the communities eat. If there are people who are wanting or who are in need in those communities, the masjid services those people and those communities, those households as well, inshallah. And another community consideration would concern garbage or disposal of garbage, because in some instances the disposal of garbage, especially garbage that contains food in it, could be a bit problematic if it's not disposed of properly or contained properly, with dogs and other animals, etc., bursting the garbage bags and leaving garbage strewn all over the streets. So please be mindful of the way that you dispose your garbage and how that affects the community. And please be very mindful of how you park in those communities, especially if the car park spaces are insufficient during the month of Ramadan. Please be very mindful as to how you park on the streets in particular. Don't double park, don't park and block anyone's driveway, etc., because the last thing we want to do is to inconvenience the members of the community in which these masjids operate. And these are all common sense things. Some of them are enacted into law. So really and truly, as Muslims, we should not in any way at all inconvenience the communities that we visit during the month of Ramadan. Our eighth point, our eighth suggestion as to how we can improve Ramadan 2020 concerns the issue of leftovers. Now, we are, as mentioned before, not here to tell you what to do at your Jamaat, but to instead show you or to share with you some of the amazing things that we witnessed in Ramadan 2019 and share them with you so that if your masjid is looking to improve on its systems, then maybe you could consider some of these. If they can work for you, great. If they can't, no problem as well. We would have done our duty to share the information with you. Now, as it pertains leftovers, I will tell you that at one masjid that we visited, we came to know afterward that their system of dealing with leftovers is one that is quite contentious, as in there are many people in the masjid who are a bit perturbed or upset by what they see as a curry favor sort of system, where they feel like only certain members of the masjid are given food to take away, etc. And in order to avoid that, we want to share with you some of the systems that we observed at other masjids. And the first one that comes to mind really is the system at Jama Masjid in San Fernando. During the course of conversation with some of the sisters there, one of the sisters told us that Maulana Soleimani, whilst he was in charge at the masjid, Maulana Mushtaq Soleimani, whilst he was in charge at the masjid, he had a system in place whereby he told the Jamaat that food that remains should not be taken home by the membership of the Jamaat. Instead, it should be given to others who would not have been fasting for Ramadan, but who would be just as hungry as the persons who were fasting in Ramadan. As such, at the Jama Masjid in San Fernando, the food is boxed and bagged accordingly and is distributed immediately to the homeless and others who are in the immediate vicinity of the masjid. If even after that distribution there is still food that remains, it's bagged, boxed, etc. and sent to the nearby soup kitchen, so that the people who need the food the most, those who are starving, those who haven't had food to eat, those who are most in need, are the ones who are on the receiving end of our empathy during the holy month of Ramadan. So the people, the brothers and sisters who are sponsoring the iftar are getting the blessings of iftar. They're getting the blessings of feeding persons who are in fact hungry. Another system that we found very interesting to share with you was the system at the Manahambre Masjid. At Manahambre Masjid, they box all the food that remains into individual containers, and each container carries with it a full meal of all the ingredients, all the items that remain, and it's all placed onto one table in the main reception, the main dining area, and it's left there for any members of the Jamaat who so desire to take a box or two and leave with it. There is no system in place there to say, I am giving you a box or you a box and you a box. It's left out onto the table. Whoever wants can take and leave. And that system eliminates any possibility of accusations of nepotism, curry favor, or anything of the sort. And at the masjid in Kumana, the system there is such that because of the far distance that the brothers and sisters in that Jamaat have to travel to come to the masjid, what the masjid does is that they cater for all the Muslims in the community during the month of Ramadan. And if that figure is 100 Muslims, they cater for 100 persons every single night. If 20 people show up at the masjid on the night to break the fast and to have the dinner, they feed the 20 persons and then they box or bag the food for the remaining 80 persons, and they then go to the households to distribute that food as well. Now that is another system that really struck us as well, that such great effort would be made to ensure that the persons who have fasted are the ones who are on the receiving end of the food that is prepared for the iftar and dinner. Alhamdulillah, may Allah bless all of them, and may you and your Jamaat find the system that works best for you. If it is already in place, great, alhamdulillah. If not, we hope that this would be able to add some value or bring you some new suggestions to your table as well. Our ninth point, and this is a very important one, concerns the issue of extravagance. The first thing that we want to mention, I want to start this part off by saying that we are not in any way at all trying to tell any of the Jamaats how to run their affairs, how to manage their affairs. We are, however, sharing feedback with you based on our experiences over the month. That being said, is there really the need for that many number of dishes? Fasting persons can only eat so much at the end of the fast, and at many of the masjids, we've noticed that there is so much food that remains. Do you really need 3 starches? Do you really need 2 and 3 protein options, meat options, etc.? Is it really necessary that there is this kind of extravagance at the various masjids? In fact, we asked this question against the backdrop of many persons telling us at some of the masjids that sometimes they feel like it's a competition with regard to the iftars, where some folks feel as though they need to outdo others in the meals that they prepare and in the type of food that is cooked, etc. And we feel personally that this is not a habit or a culture that should be encouraged. Simpler is always better, and this is the way of Islam. The simpler way, the middle road, is always the best road. So having shared that with you, we will leave it entirely up to you and your masjid to take the necessary steps to ensure that this is in fact not the case, and that we can do whatever is necessary to eliminate the extravagance and the discomfort to pray thereafter. Because it is a fact that the more filled we are, the more uncomfortable it becomes to offer the salah. Sometimes you're so filled, you become a bit lethargic or whatever the case may be, and it's difficult to offer the salah. Maybe you start getting sleepy or tired or whatever the case may be. So please bear all of these things in mind. Our 10th point is a related point, and our 10th point as to how we can improve Ramadan 2020 surrounds the issue of wastage. Now, when it comes to wastage, we're talking here about, for instance, bottled water and soft drinks. That is probably the area where there has been, we have noticed, the most wastage during Ramadan. Better systems, brothers and sisters, need to be in place. Allah dislikes the wasters. And don't just take my word for it. Read it in Al-Quran. Speak to your imam. Speak to the ulama. Allah dislikes the wasters. Why are we taking 1 and 2 sips from a bottle of water, or from a chubby bottle, or from a soft drink bottle, or whatever, and the rest has to be dumped thereafter? Why is there so much wastage? Why are we taking so much more food that we can consume, and so much of it thereafter has to be dumped? Are we not learning the lessons from Ramadan? Are we not aware that there are many others who don't have that food or drink to quench their thirst or to satisfy their hunger? Why are we doing these things? We are Muslims and should know better. So please, let us do what we can to eliminate this sort of wastage. There are different systems employed by different masjids with varying degrees of success. So for instance, at the Dow Village Masjid in California, and at the Enterprise Masjid, Community Masjid, they have a system where they dish the food out onto plates and they serve those pre-plated meals to members of the Jamaat. They do that to try to eliminate wastage. At the Sangre Grande Masjid, and also the night that we visited the Londonville Masjid, they box their food in advance. So you never receive your food in a plate, you always get your food in a box. And the Imam in particular at Sangre Grande mentioned to us that this is done specifically to eliminate wastage. So whatever remains, even if it is one morsel of food that remains, you have the option, it's already boxed, you have the option to take it with you, so that no food can be dumped, no food should be wasted at all. But brothers and sisters, whether it is pre-plated, whether you serve food buffet style, boxed to go, or whether, for instance, in Piparo and Port of Spain, Jama Masjid in Port of Spain, they serve you while you eat in Piparo. You may, in Piparo and Claxton Bay, you sit wherever you break the fast. You sit right there for iftar as well, so that whatever remains from the break of fast, you can get that. You can still have that when you come back to have dinner, and whatever water remains, you can come back to your same spot and have that same water. So you're not going for a fresh bottle of water. Whatever sort of system you employ, whatever works best for your masjid, or a combination of systems, the bottom line is that we absolutely must do something about eliminating the wastage. It is one of the most significant issues that we noticed at the various masjids over the course of Ramadan 2019. May Allah guide us all, and may we do whatever is necessary to eliminate the wastage. Our 11th point, or 11th recommendation for how we can improve our Ramadan for 2020 concerns eco-consciousness, concerns our deliberate attempts to preserve and conserve all that is environmental. All right? You know the tagline, reduce, reuse, recycle. At many masjids, they do have recycling systems in place. At the Claxton Bay Masjid, we were reminded by the brothers and sisters at that masjid that you should first seek to reduce your consumption of things that will affect the environment. You should thereafter seek as best as is possible to reuse, which is why they use glasses for water and never purchase bottled water, so that they can always reuse the glasses and they're never contributing to the disposal of plastics. And thereafter, before you get to the recycling option, you should refuse. Refuse to use some things that you know are not good for the environment, wherever and however far it is possible. And recycling should be the last resort. Now, I'm not sitting here today to try to assume that I know what is in the best interest of your Jamaat, because, for instance, we know that at some Jamaats it is impractical at this point to serve water, for instance, in paper cups, etc., because of the sheer number of people and the number of resources it would require in terms of human resources to be able to manage such a system. So you would know the dynamics of your masjid, and we're not telling you that you have to employ every system. We're not telling you that you have to become the most environmentally conscious masjid by 2020, but we are asking that when it comes to the environment, whatever you were doing in 2019, please just make one step, one incremental step toward making it better in 2020. Whether you start a recycling program, whether you start using filtered water, whatever the case may be. But there are so many ways, common sense ways, that we can reduce our wastage and we can reduce our impact on the environment. There's so much unnecessary use of plastics and styrofoam iftar plates in styro and thereafter the dinner plates in styro. We could lean towards using plates, using regular plates that can be washed. The same money that will be spent on the styrofoam and plastics, that same money can be used to pay someone every night and provide them with employment every single day to wash those dishes, etc. As is the case in many masjids, at Claxton Bay, at the Gasparilla Masjid, and at a couple other masjids as well. Water filters, water bottles, jugs, etc. Dishes instead of disposables, and community instead of individual. At many masjids, when individual iftar plates are served, there is wastage because a lot of the kids don't eat the dates. So the dates are dumped because it's not always practical. You're not always sitting next to someone who you can hand the date to necessarily, or who will accept food from your plate per se. So sometimes there is wastage in that regard. But at many of the masjids, in Manahambre, in Kumana, in Enterprise, and a couple other masjids as well, they employ a system where they serve a plate of dates, a plate of whatever else is provided to break the fast. So you take what you want and you leave what you don't want, and whatever remains goes back into the refrigerator or goes back into storage for the next day, as the case may be. And that way they eliminate immediately 100 plus styrofoam plates and plastic wrapping and that sort of stuff. And even if your better effort towards an eco-friendly Ramadan 2020 begins with scrapping the plastic wrap for napkins like they do at the Gasparilla Masjid, even that is a start. Anything that you can do to be more environmentally conscious and to be aware of the impact that our iftars collectively are having on the environment, anything that you can do towards this end would be greatly appreciated, inshallah. So our 12th point as to how we can improve our Ramadan 2020 concerns considerations for your Jamaat members' health. Now, at the end of the day, after a conversation with one of the Maulanas at one of the masjids that we visited, at the end of the day, it really boils down to individual choice and what individuals choose to consume. But there are some things that we can do to lean towards healthier lifestyles. If you were to attend iftar at your masjid every single night, would you be having a healthy diet? Would you be having a balanced diet? Think of, for instance, little ways that we can improve the health of our Jamaat members by making simple changes. For instance, at many iftars, there is a proliferation of fried foods to break the fast. You've got your samosas and you've got your puloris and your sahinas, etc. And then fried foods, fried rice, fried chicken, and so many other fried options for dinner thereafter. Now, this is not to say at all that every single night has to be a spread of salad and a spread of the best and healthiest foods available. But this is simply to say that we have to be a little more aware, looking at the bigger picture of how we are impacting the health of our Jamaat members. So whether improved health in 2020 means that we reduce the amount of fried food, whether improved health means that we shy away from soya bean and other unhealthy oils and move towards maybe coconut oil, for instance, whether improved health means that we shy away from the BPA that we are exposed to, which is carcinogenic in plastic bottles, and start using water in, recyclable or reusable glasses, etc. Whether better health in 2020 means that we eliminate one of the soft drinks served, because at many masjids, soft drink is served to break the fast as well as for dinner. Maybe we can make soft drink available for the dinner and encourage the Jamaat to break the fast with water. Now, again, at the end of the day, this is still a very personal choice. But even something as simple as making room temperature water available was a bit problematic, because at many masjids that wasn't the case. It was cold water and cold refreshments. And there have been many studies and many many papers that have already been published talking about the hazards that you expose yourself to when you break the fast with something cold, the shock that you're sending your kidneys through, for instance. So all of these things need to be considered at the masjid level and thereafter at individual levels. And I say at both levels because the masjids necessarily They do have a responsibility to their Jamaat members, but I do know as well that masjids don't want to impose certain things on Jamaat members, and they are still making it optional for their Jamaat members. But please know that you don't have to break the fast with sahina and pylori and all of the oil and grease that we're putting into our bodies first thing after we break the fast. And then on top of that, we're serving watermelon for dessert, when really and truly it should be the other way around. Break the fast with the fruit and use the samosas and the pies and the sahinas for dessert thereafter. So we're getting the healthy and nutritious foods in our bodies first, and we're having all of these, all of these other decadent items thereafter. So apart from the oils and all of the other things that we spoke about, sugar level as well, and the sugar consumption is also something that needs to be considered. Think of the spike in your insulin, when as soon as you break the fast, you're having all this food that will automatically spike your insulin levels, and then on top of that, we're adding all the sugary desserts and treats, etc. So we really do have to educate our Jamaat members so that we make better individual choices, and where possible, and the Jamaat can help the Jamaat members to make better choices, please do so as well. Our 3 points that remain are very short points and probably the most important as well. Our 13th recommendation for how we can make Ramadan better in 2020 concerns maximizing opportunities for reward in Ramadan. You see those last couple minutes before the break of fast? Those are the minutes when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised us the greatest reward, where He told us that du'as are answered. And yet, at some masjids, they've got such beautiful systems where they've got the members of the Jamaat engaged in dhikr, in the remembrance of Allah, engaged in dua, both collective and personal during that time, where there is such great discipline and such tranquility that permeates the air, especially in these final few moments leading up to the break of fast. And then there are some Jamaats where we feel really that systems can be improved so that in those last 5 minutes, you're not using those last 5 minutes to now go get your iftar plate, or to now go get your water, or to now be moving around to get things. Please put better systems in place so that as soon as you enter, you can get your plate, you can get your drink, whatever the case may be, and sit, so that that last 5 minutes, those last few minutes could be utilized as best as possible. It's kind of like you worked for the entire day, you fasted the entire day, and when it comes to payday, you're skimping out. You don't want to be present. You're not showing up at all. You're going to do something else because you're distracted. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do that when you work. You wouldn't do that when it's time to go collect your paycheck, as the case may be. So why are we doing that during the month of Ramadan? In these moments where we are told that these are the moments where our reward is greatest, if we ask earnestly and if we ask sincerely. So please put better systems in place so that these last few moments are not spent engaged in talking, and worse yet, in now trying to make arrangements to collect iftar plates and drinks, etc. Our 14th point concerns Islamophobia. In Londonville, we invited some of our non-Muslim friends to join us there, and we were absolutely amazed at how powerful an invitation was as a form of dawah. It was a better way to tell these non-Muslims about Islam than any words we can speak to them outside of Ramadan. We invited them to the masjid. They came to the masjid even though they didn't fast. They broke the fast with us. They were exposed to the tranquility of the masjid. They were exposed to the culture of the Muslims. It was such an intimate experience for them. They felt like they were being treated to something that they're not normally privy to. They prayed with us. They learned to pray with us. Some of them made the intention to return to the masjid. Now, isn't that one of the easiest forms of dawah? Why are we not inviting our non-Muslim brothers and sisters, even if it's one person in our circle, family member, friend, co-worker, etc., and whether it is to iftar at our homes, to iftar at our Jamaats, whatever the case may be, we have found, at least this was our experience, that it really was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful form of dawah, and one that words really can't capture or can't describe. It really afforded us as well as Muslims a very unique perspective as well, a different perspective, because in chatting with our non-Muslim brothers and sisters who attended the masjid with us, they were impressed by so many things, and they made us aware, for instance, in that particular episode in Londonville, that something as simple as offering the salah that we take for granted, Not everyone is able to walk off the streets and immediately get into all of the various positions in which we offer our salah, in which we pray. Going down for the sajda is something that we take for granted, for instance, and it's not something that anyone can walk in off the street and be able to do. So all of these beautiful things about the faith were pointed out to us by our non-Muslim brothers and sisters. And we do hope that you use the opportunity to remove Islamophobia from the minds of our non-Muslim brothers and sisters, our non-Muslim nationals and friends, one person at a time, with something as simple as an invitation, inshallah. And lastly, I want to end off by saying the 15th way that we think Ramadan 2020 could be better is if the imams, the leadership, the ulamas, the scholars at the masjids, the amirs at the masjids are the ones who are taking charge and leading the culture of change. The change is not going to happen at the masjids if only one and two persons at the ground level are trying to enact the change. So this is really an appeal to the imams and to the ulamas and the amirs at the masjids, etc., to take from our experience whatever is beneficial to your Jamaat, to your community, to your specific culture, and leave the rest, inshallah. But whatever changes can be enacted, whatever you have found useful, we do hope that you will lead the charge to make these changes and to make the Ramadan experience even better heading into 2020, inshallah. If we have said anything over the course of sharing these 15 recommendations or suggestions with you that came across an ill light or that can be construed in any way other than positive and as humble suggestions, we do apologize and seek your forgiveness in advance. If there is any goodness that comes from it, we hope that this goodness redounds to the Jamaats who provided us with these insights and this little bit of knowledge that we are now able to share with you, inshallah. And we do hope as well that the Iftar Insights series and even our final episode per se that is ending off the series here today has been beneficial to you. May Allah reward us all, and we do look forward to a better and more rewarding Ramadan, inshallah, in 2020. Thank you again. We'll see you next year, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.